Most people jump straight into Claude Code and wonder why everything breaks. The secret to actually shipping a project with AI isn't about the prompts, it's about what you do before you write a single line of code. I'm going to walk you through the exact environment setup I use for every Claude Code project, Supabase, Next.JS, GSD framework. So when you hit go, everything just works. I've started up a cursor file and I've installed Claude Code onto my machine. If you don't have it installed, it's pretty easy. Just go to the Claude Code website and then there's a command that you run on your terminal and it will install Claude for you. And then from there, all you have to do is hit the install button. So I've just opened up a new project. You can tell here there's no files in it. And I have a Claude opened up in my terminal. How I did that is I just typed in Claude and then I want dangerously skip permissions. And that opened up Claude for me. But before I dive into Claude, there's a couple of dependencies we want to install for this project. So first of all, we're going to be using and designing the dashboard with Next.JS and React. We're going to be connecting to a Supabase database, and we're also going to need API keys for all of our sales stats. So I'm going to move forward assuming you have Node and NPX installed on your machine. I can provide descriptions on how to install these two dependencies before you start moving. And then the next thing we need to do is install GSD, the Get Shit Done Claude application. All you want to do to install GSD is run this command on your command line, npx get shit done cc at latest, and then follow the prompts. But you need npx installed in order for this to work. I already have GSD installed globally. If you install it globally, it will work on every project. So if I go into Claude right here and I type in /GSD, you can see all of the commands pop up for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit GSD update, and it's essentially going to update my GSD before I start this. And this is a good practice every time you load up Claude and you want to use GSD. While that's going, we want to install Next.JS, which this is the command right here. Okay, Next.JS is being installed. And you can see it's working here because it's coming up in my project folders. And this is just a dependency that Claude Code works really well with, and we can get some really pretty designs. Great, we can now see that Next.js is installed on my machine or for this project. The next thing I want to do is I want to install the Supabase dependency as well, and this is the command that you use to engage Supabase in your project, and I'm going to run that. One thing to really keep in mind here is you want to make sure that your directory is your project, right? So I've already have that set up through Cursor, but what you can do is you can just hit CD and then change the directory to your actual project file. So we can see now Supabase is installed in the project and we have the main dependencies. The next thing we want to do before we even engage GSD is we want to enable our environment.local file or our environment file. This is where all of our API keys and our Supabase access is going to sit. And so every time Claude needs to access Supabase, it's essentially going to dig into that file so it can access the database. And what we're going to be doing later, or very shortly, is install the Superbase MCP. So we don't even need to design our database. We're just going to have Claude do it for us, which is going to save us a lot of time. Okay, so you can see that my GSD does need to be updated. So I'm just going to hit update now. And since I started Claude with skip permissions dangerously, I don't need to confirm everything here. It just does it. I would recommend you do your projects this way because it'll save you a lot of time. There are times that AI is going to make mistakes, but that's okay. That's just part of a learning process when you do a lot of Claude Code projects. You need to understand the risks involved with moving fast. If you don't want to take those risks, you can always just turn on permissions and away you go. But always double check your work, always double check the code that goes through, and you'll be fine. So next step is we have most of our dependencies done, but in order to move really fast, especially on the database end, we want to install the Superbase MCP. Before we actually install the Superbase MCP, however, we want to register a database on Supabase. So let's do that really quickly. And I'm going to open up a browser and we'll register the Supabase database together. So I've registered for Supabase and I've selected create a new project. When you first join Supabase, you'll have to create an organization and then this will come up once you go to create a new project. So for this project name, I'm just going to call it my sales dashboard. You can just generate a strong password and then you can select enable data API. And then if you really want to, you can select a particular region. So the region is important, especially if you're working with some clients where data residency is a thing. But other than that, usually just the recommended region is the best thing to go with. And then you can go into the advanced configuration if you want, but GSD is really going to take a lot of this questioning and setup out of the equation for us, and it's going to explain it succinctly. So I'm going to hit create new project. It's going to take some time to actually create this project and get launched. But that being said, there's a couple of things that we want to grab before we continue. Go into your project settings, and there's a few things you want to grab. So the first thing you want to grab is your project ID. The next thing you're going to want to grab is if you go to API keys, there's a publishable key. You're going to want to grab that and put it into a notepad. And then you're going to want to grab the service role key right here. So just one more time, settings, you grab the project ID, you grab the default publishable key, and then you just hit legacy anon service role API keys, and you want to grab the service role key. And what we're going to do next is we are going to create a .env file, and we're going to drop all of our keys in there. Additionally, if you have other services that you want to connect into your dashboard, like in my particular example, I'm going to be using SmartLead, which is my email provider, cold email sender. And then I'm going to be using GetSales, which organizes all of our LinkedIn information and LinkedIn outreach. I'm going to be grabbing those two API keys and dropping that in that .env file. So when Claude Code starts to develop the dashboard, it has full access to those API keys and it can explore it. So I'm going to create that right now. Claude, can you create a .env file for me where I can store my API keys and give you access into other tech? So right there, I just hit Command H, which essentially allows me to just do voice into Claude. And it's like a cheat code if you do any terminal work or any Claude Code work. So you can see Claude created my env local file. Now all we have to do is drop in our Superbase public URL and the anon key, but keep the service role key available for you when you're ready. Next things next is we also want to install the Superbase MCP so Claude Code can just access and make SQL queries on our behalf. So the next thing we need to do is just install the Supabase MCP server. So I'm just going to tell Claude Code to create a .mcp JSON file, and I'm going to feed it the Supabase configuration. Claude, can you create a MCP JSON file and insert the Supabase MCP into it? I will provide the info in this prompt. In order to configure your Supabase MCP, you're going to have to go to Supabase dashboard /account/tokens and then create a token for yourself. I'm going to create a token called sales dashboard right now and copy that token for my project. So all you need to do now is drop your personal access token where it says authorization bearer and your MCP will work. So this is what mine looks like. Yours should look similar. And how we can test this out is if we go here and we type in /MCP, we can see that the Supabase MCP is now connected. I'll exit out of that and I'll just say, previously I created a Supabase table with the MCP, but I can just ask Claude Code, can you use the Supabase MCP to see if a sales dashboard table exists? And this will now search for a sales dashboard table inside of Supabase. While we're doing that, what I asked Claude Code to do, and you can see it found the sales dashboard table. And if we check Supabase, you can see here that our sales dashboard table does exist and it created it. So you can ask Claude anything and it will create whatever you need to do via SQL query inside of Supabase. So what's next? So the next step we want to do is we want to clear our context window. So what I've done is I've ran GSD new project now, and you can see that GSD is starting to do its thing. I've already done GSD map code base, so we're getting this project started and we're cooking with fire now that we have the entire project file set up for us. That's your full environment locked and loaded. Now in part 2, I actually build the sales dashboard. And let's just say Claude Code had some opinions about how that should go. So subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you in the next one.